So this presentation is going to support you in completing part of the RICE project you've been set. Now, I'm specifically going to focus today on slides 3 and slides 12 of the project. Slide 3 was about the video research you were asked to conduct, and slide 12 is some of the exam questions you've been asked to look at in a little more detail. So I'll go through some of that now. Now, on this research slide, you've been provided 2 videos to watch. The first is about the future of London's roads, and the second is a 5-year review of the Olympic legacy and the lasting impact of the regeneration in East London. And then what you've been provided is a series of questions to have a go at answering. So the first thing I've done, and I would suggest that you do as well if you haven't already, is to watch the videos through and to record the key notes and key points, the main information about what you've been shown. So especially bearing in mind the kind of questions you've got here in terms of being asked about private car use and the number of journeys in London, public transport, the Olympic Games and how that's impacted East London, the affordable houses and stuff like that. So be aware of the questions you're going to be asked and then make some notes. So if I move on to the next slide, you can see here that I've recorded the things that I feel are really important. So 80% of London's public spaces are actually roads, 90% of freight. So what we mean by that is imports and exports, food and things being delivered arrive by road. This obviously is going to be a main reason why there's so much congestion. We've actually got falling use of cars, which is quite interesting considering how bad the traffic congestion is. I wonder if that's to do with the fact that the congestion is so bad, people don't want to drive, they'd rather walk, cycle and use public transport. Something really important here is that you've got 9,400 deaths each year in London because of air pollution. Now, that's going to have a massive impact on quality of life. It links into this recurring theme of deprivation. There's some areas in London where deprivation's higher than others, and it's quite likely that that will correlate with where the air pollution is worse. You've got economic information there about how much the congestion costs in London each year. So what we mean by that is late deliveries and cost on extra petrol and fuel being used by sitting in traffic jams, the strain on the NHS when ambulances can't arrive on time and things like that. And then more importantly, because we are geographers, we need to be able to look at 2 sides of an argument. Is yes, there's all of these problems and issues, but there's also suggestions for how to solve these issues as well. So some of the things suggested is, well, if we have road tunnels in London, less people are actually on the surface and some will be below the roads, if that makes sense. So you'll have tunnels kind of bypassing and going underneath congested areas. You might even have river crossings and people moving from north to south London more easily. Smart technology and traffic lights and buses, which means they can move a little bit more efficiently and keep the London traffic moving. The second video ties into this a little bit as well. We're looking specifically at East London, which is known as being more deprived. You've got quite high levels of poverty in some areas like Stratford and Newham. You've got housing shortages, you've got issues with attainment in school. So it was an area that really needed some work done, and this is why it won the bid to become the Olympic Park. So obviously the Olympics lasted 4 weeks. It's a large sporting event, but after the event finishes, we don't just want the new buildings that have been created to become dilapidated and disused. We had to prove that there would be a lasting impact, that the Olympics would leave a legacy which would continue to benefit the economy and the society of London for a long time to come. So I've recorded some of the key things or some important points there. We get 9 million visitors every year to the Olympic Park. They have to have things to visit. They're not coming just for no reason. The Olympics is long gone. That was 2012. So there must be some facilities there that people want to see and want to use. 8 of the buildings are permanent, and so they're still there and they've got lasting use. You'll be aware of the fact that West Ham Football Club bought the main Olympic stadium. They pay £2 million every year just to use the stadium, so that's obviously bringing some income into the area. You'll have workers who work in the stadium, and obviously you'll have West Ham fans and other fans who buy tickets and use the stadium. The Copper Box, now unless you watched the Olympics and you were probably very young at the time, you must have been, you might not remember or know much about the Copper Box. It's one of the multi-use buildings, so it was used for several different sports, and they were able to move seats around, adding more in, taking some away, and now it's what we'd call a multi-use space. So you've got state-of-the-art gym equipment in there for people who live locally and want to use the gym. The London Lions basketball team use this as their training ground, and then other sporting events can actually hire this space to put matches on. I know during the Olympics it was used for volleyball and handball and other things like that. Now during the Olympics, all of the athletes needed somewhere to stay. Remember, most were not from this country, and so they were provided accommodation in what was called the Olympic Village. This at the time was kind of little rooms and apartments for the players and athletes to stay in. And today they have been converted into homes, so flats and apartments. There's been about 2,800 homes created, which is a social impact. That's a positive thing socially, of which almost half were classed as affordable, or half were classed as affordable. I've realised that's half. No, it isn't. Excuse me for messing up my maths there. This is where we've got a little bit of a limitation, a little bit of a criticism. I've put the word affordable in inverted commas there because who's judging? This 1,439 homes may be cheaper than the others, but will they be affordable for some of the socially deprived people who live in this area of London, who possibly were relying on council and social housing? Possibly not, so we're going to be a little bit sceptical there. Now, let's move on. We know it's a difficult task to be able to motivate yourself at home and to answer exam style questions successfully without your teachers there to support you. But that's why some of these questions in your RICE project have not got mark requirements next to them. So you can see none of these here, say 2 marks, 6 marks, 4 marks. And the reason for that is we're not expecting long answers for all of these questions. Some of them will treat a little bit more like comprehension, just so we know that you are finding out the main things we'd like you to know. Okay, so as you can see, I've done some answers here. I would rather you didn't pause now and write all of these down as your own. See if you can add to them, change them, offer anything else. But these, yeah, as you can see, I've done quite short, almost bullet pointed answers. But if you do have the time and the motivation, it's a great opportunity to be able to practice some longer answers. Okay, so you can see I've written down some answers to, you know, what's happening to London's number of journeys. Well, actually, the journeys are increasing because jobs are constantly being created in London. More and more people move to London. Its population grows week by week. Most people are going to have to commute. Most people are going to have to move around on a day-by-day basis. Therefore, more journeys are happening. What's surprising and really positive is something we've discussed already, which is the fact that the number of private car journeys is falling. So many people now specifically living, or especially living in central London, they don't tend to drive to work, they don't tend to drive to school, partially because congestion is so bad, it might not be the quickest route, but also there's so much being done now to encourage people to move around in different ways and to use public transport, that actually driving's not always seen as the most desirable option. If you look through the questions, you'll see that lower down, they turn into questions about the Olympic regeneration. So the top half are about the road issue and the bottom half are about the Olympics. You can have a little read through there, and once again I would encourage you to chop and change and see if you can find any more information than what I've provided here. As you can probably notice, all I've done here is just make the font in that right hand box a little bit smaller, and I've just typed my answers beside the questions just to keep me on track and know what I'm doing here. Okay, we'll move on to the next slide and we'll have a look at some of the exam questions. So this is page 12 of your RICE project. It's the final page. You'll notice that the slide before it has, or the couple of slides before it, have exam questions but some model answers as well. So what I'm going to do is just focus really on 3 of the exam questions that you can answer using the videos that we watched. You don't necessarily have to use all of the stuff that you've been provided to answer all of these questions. So if you see, I've highlighted 3 of these questions in purple. They're the ones that I feel will be able to have a good go at answering using simply the 2 videos you've watched. We've got a 4 marker, we've got a 6 marker, and we've got a 9 marker with 3 marks for SPAG. So the way we need to do this is to look back over our notes, to have a think about the other resources you've had a look at, to use your exercise book and have a think about the stuff you learnt back at the start of year 9 in the Urban Issues and Challenges module. And you're going to apply all of this to answering the questions successfully. Now the command word here is explain. The question is, explain how the regeneration of Newham has created economic opportunities. Newham is in East London. Newham is part of the borough which was regenerated for the Olympics. And so really the trick here is you can just talk about Olympic regeneration and that covers Newham as well. Okay, so economic, we're talking and thinking about money. Opportunities, that's positive things, it's chances, it's things that have been provided, ways of making money, or ways money are coming into this area now because of the regeneration. The command is explain, therefore we need peel paragraphs. We need to make a point which links directly to that question. We need to provide evidence and examples to support that. We need to explain it. This is the key part, this is the application. You need to explain how this example has, where's that economic opportunity there, explain the link. And then usually you link it back naturally, but I'm going to try and specifically show you how to do that. So it's up to you now how much you're going to challenge yourself. You can pause now and have a go at answering this and then have a look at what I've written. Or perhaps you can have a look at my answer first and then that'll help you with the next questions that are coming. So if you're going to pause, do so now. Okay, so if you have a look, the point I've made here, and I've provided images to support what I'm thinking. Economic opportunities, straight away I'm thinking jobs. Where are people working here? The left photo is of the left photo and the middle photo are of Here East, which during the Olympic Games was the media centre. This is where the TV presenters from around the world were situated and broadcasting back to their countries on how their teams were doing. That served a great purpose at the time, but we don't need that all year round, and certainly not for 12 years to follow, or 8 years to follow, sorry, since 2012. So instead, this is now a hub for businesses where they rent out offices and their workplaces are. It's really a hub for media, roles in the media, so you still have TV that's filmed here, for example Sky Sports. No, sorry, not Sky Sports, BT Sports is filmed in the Here East Centre all year round. Obviously not always about the Olympics. You also have some small businesses and companies here, some small media companies that hire spaces and employ their staff here. So hundreds of different businesses. On the right hand picture, you can see that that's a construction site. Now, actually what was being constructed there was the main Olympic Stadium. We can talk about economic opportunities in several ways here. For starters, obviously, builders and construction workers will have been contracted in to help with the building of the park and the creation of these different stadiums. But also, if we look at it in different ways, if you think about the use of the Olympic Stadium now, it's West Ham's football stadium. They'll have staff in terms of staff who work, in the bars and cafes, the ones who work in the West Ham shop, the ones who work at the events in the stadium, the security. You'll have the actual football staff. And you've also got to think about the fact that West Ham Club paid £2 million every year to the owners of the building in order to use it. So you've got money coming in here on lots of different levels. At a local level, you've got individual people who are employed, and at a sort of more larger scale level, you've got the fact that East End of London have got money coming in because of all of these people who are working and paying taxes and buying and spending here. It's a really excellent opportunity for them. So first of all, I've made a point. Regeneration in Newham has provided many jobs. We don't have to overthink it. It's as simple as that. We know that's correct. If it wasn't for these buildings being here, those jobs might not have been provided. Let's give an example. 9 million people visit the Olympic Park each year. Okay, I haven't linked directly to the economy yet, but that's why the explanation is so important. So have a look at this. Jobs have been created in the tourism and leisure industry in order to cater for these visitors. Examples could include hotels, taxis, restaurants and shops. So in my answer, I've not even discussed the fact that here East is home to hundreds of different businesses. You might do that. That's a really specific example. Let's have a look at how to link it back. The increase in employment is an economic opportunity for local people as well as the wider area of East London. Okay, so lots of people who are working is actually bringing money into the wider area. For a 4 marker, you need 1 Peel paragraph. That's it. One example, explain it, link it, make sure you're touching upon those key points: regeneration and economic opportunities. The next question is a 6 marker. Same command word, explain. Very similar question, but worded a little bit differently. Now this is to show you an example of how AQA can be a little bit sneaky with the way they word things. It's not a difficult question, but it sounds more difficult. It says, explain how urban regeneration projects can reduce levels of urban deprivation. Well, remember that deprivation means that people are living in a situation where they are deprived of something. That's usually money. It might be education, it might be healthcare, it might be good quality housing. So really it's an advanced way of saying a poorer area, or an area where people are struggling a little bit more to have a good quality of life. Okay, so all it's asking is how urban regeneration projects, for example, the London Olympic regeneration, or new housing projects or new business projects, how they can reduce urban deprivation. So basically this question is saying, how can regeneration of part of a city reduce the amount of poor people there are, or the amount of people who don't have a good quality of life? So we're going to think about the exact same stuff, only this time I'm going to focus a little bit more on social elements rather than economic, but you could do either. So once again, if we looked at the job opportunities that have been created in Here East, it's as simple as that. If there's more jobs provided, less people are poor, therefore there's less urban deprivation. Now, for a 6 marker, You want to try and get at least 2 examples in. I'd look at doing 2 Peel paragraphs. The photographs are to give us a little bit of a hint of what we could use. So the first photograph shows part of the Athletes Village, which is now some of the new housing. What you can see in the middle photograph is a school trip where the students are in the velodrome and learning how to cycle around the velodrome. And the final one is the new Javelin train, which travels through Stratford and has provided new transport for people in this area. If you're going to have a go at this on your own, pause now and give yourself 6 or 7 minutes. Let's have a look at how I've worded one of the Peel paragraphs. So the point I've made is this. Urban regeneration of the East End of London has created new housing. Once again, straight in, dead simple, we've got new homes. They wouldn't be there if this area had not been regenerated. The Athletes Village in the Queen Elizabeth II Olympic Park, I'm just naming it in full because I need to show the examiner that I know what I'm talking about. I'm using a case study well. Has been converted into 2,818 homes, almost half of which are affordable. That's just me providing an example. I haven't explained or linked yet, so I haven't got the full marks yet. Here we go. This much needed housing can improve the quality of life of This much needed housing can improve the quality of life of many of Stratford and Newham's deprived population. The fact that many of the homes are affordable will maximise the reduction of urban deprivation as more people can afford the homes. It makes sense. There's new houses. Well, there was a housing shortage here. Now there might not be. Yes, okay, people here are quite deprived, quite poor, but guess what? Half of these houses are affordable. So surely that means some of them can afford it as well. Therefore, reducing urban deprivation. So let's have a look. The new housing is solving the issue of housing shortages and poor quality of housing in this deprived area of London. So we've linked it back. If you're going to get full marks here, go on with another example. So maybe what you do there is something like new opportunities for people have been created here. For example, school children and school students can visit the velodrome and have lessons. This reduces urban deprivation because it provides more opportunities to them and more leisure opportunities to them. Therefore, they are not as deprived as they once were. Okay, finally, let's take a look at the 9 marker. Once again, this is an example of how the questions might be worded by AQA. We're going to use really similar content here, but we're just going to create a slightly different structure to be able to answer this question properly. It says, to what extent has urban change created opportunities in a UK city you have studied? There's that term opportunities again. There's the term urban change. So once again, we can talk about the Olympic regeneration and how it's provided opportunities for the people who live in this area. The most different thing here is the command, which is to what extent. To what extent means how much, or how far do you agree? If I was to use a current example, it might be, to what extent do you think we should still be keeping a 2-metre distance from other people? No matter how strongly you feel about something, you must be able to look at both sides of the argument. So that might be, to some extent the 2-metre rule seems pointless because if we're all going to be in a classroom together anyway, we're breathing in the same air, we're not safe. But to another extent, it is safer than actually being very close to each other. It's safer than shaking hands and sitting beside each other at the same desk. So, okay, overall, even though it's got limited success, the 2-metre rule is keeping us a little bit safer than we might have been had it not been in place. Okay, so you look at one side, you look at the other side, and then you give a bit of a balanced conclusion. I'm going to be quick here. It's asking to what extent, so how much has urban change created opportunities here? So How much has the Olympic regeneration provided opportunities to the people in East London? We're going to be looking at, yes, the opportunities have been created, they've been great. And then the other extent would be, well, yeah, there's opportunities, but they've been limited, or I don't think there have been opportunities at all. It's up to you to find that evidence. If we look at my examples, you can see on the left-hand side of the table that the opportunities I've thought of is new housing, new jobs, and new leisure activities. The other side of my argument would be that some of these have not provided opportunities for everybody, or there's limitations. For example, not all of the housing is affordable. Not all of the jobs are suitable for the people who live here, the deprived people who might not be particularly well skilled and educated. And some of the leisure activities are expensive. I don't think many of the children of Newham will be cycling in the velodrome every weekend, unfortunately. It's not a cheap task to do. Here's the sentence starters that you need. To some extent, urban change has created opportunities in London because this is where we talk about the good stuff. This is where we talk about the fact there's 2,800 new houses and there's more being built. This is where we talk about the fact you've got 8 different venues offering lots of different sporting activities, leisure activities, and within that many jobs. And then we'll look at the different kind of leisure opportunities provided to people, and the fact that you've got a brand new park, the Queen Elizabeth Park. It's got walkways, it's got vegetation, it's a wonderful place to go. To another extent, the opportunities have been limited or unsuccessful because this is where we put on our geographical critical thinking hats, and we have to really address the other side. Yeah, okay, there's 2,818 new homes, but only just less than half of them are classed as affordable. And who's judging what affordable is? What might be affordable to one person is possibly not affordable to a single parent household living in Newham. Okay, so we need to have a look at that side as well. Okay, yeah, new jobs have been provided, but not everybody in Newham and Stratford is qualified to work in media roles. Not everybody can have a job at BT Sport. We don't all know how to do those skills. So there's jobs for some, but not for everybody. Okay, overall, I believe make it balanced. Yeah, to some extent there's been many opportunities. There are new homes, there are many jobs, there's new transport links and there's new leisure opportunities here in the East End of London. However, as much as this urban change has brought around some opportunities, they haven't been successful for all. Not everybody can afford this housing. The people who were displaced from the homes that had to be cleared in order to build the Olympic Park in the first place probably can't afford to move into the new housing. And that's what the photograph on the right hand side refers to. Yeah, it's great that children can go on school trips to the velodrome and use the Olympic pool, but living in a deprived area of London, it might be the case that their families can't afford to send them every week. So is it a realistic hobby for them to take up in the long run? Possibly not. Take 9 to 12 minutes here, gents, and please be careful with your spelling, punctuation and grammar. It'd be silly to lose out on those marks. Good luck with the rest of the project. Mr. Charnley will record the next sessions to help you with the rest of it, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon.